Hello.
It's a rather a small group here.
Yes, indeed, an intimate group.
You
Yeah.
want to close the door so Lydia come in?
Oh, all right. Let me get cooking here. Come on.
The Golden Pagoda.
Come on. Here we go. Now we're talking. Oh yeah.
Play
All
some more of
right.
that piano music, Max.
I just can't get enough of Mike Jones. I it never gets old. It's that sort of thing. Just
It's
never.
very relaxing.
It is that one in particular. The vast majority of what he plays is just blindingly fast and chaotic. But occasionally, there's a nice slow ballad. But yeah, like him, I've also been getting, as you may have noticed in the past months, been getting into a lot of hula, aloha, jazz sort of stuff. I've really been enjoying that. But yeah. Anyway, thanks for the few folks that are here. Really nice to see you. I just couldn't stand going another damn week without listening to some music or something like that. It's unbearable. It's unbearable. But anyway, here we are, and I invited Judy and Carl for the sake of just missing Frank and wanting to hear more about him. I'd revisited the 90th birthday extravaganza video, and I certainly have a sense of him, and certainly benefited from a lot of his stuff. Just wanted to just have a little time to think and listen and all that sort of stuff in terms of no rhyme or reason, no order to it. Just thinking of and hearing about Frank.
You heard anything from Mo?
He's
He's been
supposed to
kind of
be here.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, he said he was gonna be here. I'll
How
send
about
him a note
Greg?
right now.
How about Greg?
He did not respond back, but I did invite him, as well as uh, James has also been uh, active in these sorts of discussions. Uh, and who else? Emma, surprisingly. Um Mo did have something he wanted me to run by both of you. He wants to do this virtual recording, and it sounds as though he actually wants to go through with it in spite of the technical hurdles. Is there a song in mind that you think would fit to be able? It's totally out of context for me. I never play these songs or rehearse them without the band.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a sense of what might be an appropriate song to do a virtual recording of each independent person? Erland, anything
Well,
comes to mind?
not immediately, but I could page through the book and probably come up with a suggestion. Um, we might even want to start with something really simple, just to be exercising the technique. Make sure
Mm-hmm.
that we're able to, for example, if there are four of us playing, each one could play a major scale, but in a different key that harmonizes. And I presume we do this too with a metronome so that we're all doing it at the same rate, but recording them separately, and then you have a way of putting them together. Is that?
Yeah, I do. It's the challenge of the differences in tempo. Really getting that nailed down will be the challenge.
If we can follow a director, we ought to be able to follow a metronome.
Hopefully, I would hope so. Although there's a lot of back and forth with I don't know. Rossmoor has a tendency to speed things up pretty intensely. But hopefully, yes, with a metronome, I think if anything, it'd be beneficial with the whole tempo keeping thing. As much of a difficulty as maybe. My idea was to have Ben lay down, because you can guarantee that one of these, Jared or Ben, since we've had more back and forth with Ben recently, it might probably bring him into it. But he would no doubt have a very steady tempo to get things rolling, get the rhythm section, and then expand from there. But still trying to figure out what the best. I mean, there's so many songs. It's hard to.
Max,
Yeah.
is it? I'm kind of confused about the virtual thing. Would somebody be up there, like Mo up there? Would he be directing it and giving us downbeats, or Greg or something like that?
What would happen is, no, it would not be on Zoom. We'd all do it individually. You'd be sent a recording or have a metronome, something to play to. That way there's a standard rhythmic throughout for everyone.
Yeah.
It'd be disastrous if we tried to do that over this. It just does not cut it. But you'd play against the recording or metronome, which you'd send in, and then they'd be all put together. So everyone, Ron, you do yours, I do mine, all independently, and then they'd be matched up at the end.
Our church group did that. Our church choir did that.
Really? Now, how did that? Do you have any words of wisdom? How did that go?
It came out really well.
Really? Okay, well then there's some hope.
To the director that did that, I could give you his name.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay.
What method did you use to?
I think there was a soloist that we have, and she sang, and she had an earphone in her ear, and then she would sing, and I guess just her voice is recorded.
Mm-hmm.
And then he took all of the voices. They had 15 or 20 people. And then he fed it all together. And then on the screen, you could see all the choir members there. It was amazing. It's beyond my understanding, but I would be happy to have him, if you wish to get in.
That'd be neat. You have to get some expertise. Certainly. Okay. Interesting. I'm getting a call from Mo. Let's see what the scoop is here.
Oh, okay. Don't let him make up any excuses.
Damn straight.
Tell him it's 7:30.
Hello? Yeah, we're here. Eager to see your face. Yeah. Okay. All right. No, that sounds fine. We're expecting a perfect presentation. No, never mind. Okay, we'll be here. All right. See you soon. No excuse. We'll never know. Maybe we'll find out soon enough. But that'd be. It still seems daunting to me, but perhaps with I need some more coercing. We'll see.
there must be a particular software application, maybe several. I mean, you're not going to just try to invent how to do it on your own, are you?
No, no. The problem with the existing, so I did some looking, and it depends on the person. So a lot of them are made to harmonize with yourself, right? You do one track, it
Oh,
loops, you know,
okay.
12 bars
Yeah.
or whatever, and then you play another one, a harmony, whatever it may be, and it loops again. That's counting on the fact that there's a steady sort of thing to begin with, and chances are you'll be able to do that with yourself. Whereas if everyone, 30 people are doing it independently, less likely for that to be the case. Hence why the metronome is so important, or some backing track that establishes where to start. Now what, Mo? But yes, I don't plan to do it from beginning. Come on. Anyway.
So I'd be expecting an audio prompt that I could hear with my headphones.
Yeah.
But which wouldn't be recorded on top of my playing, because of course the playing wouldn't be.
Okay.
I can record the playing without also recording what I'm hearing in my headphones.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, all right. Well, then that seems relatively doable.
That's a good idea, Erlen. Something that everybody could play to, like you were saying, Max, the drums, you could have the percussion and record that and then send that out somehow so that we could hear it in earphones and then play our parts to that.
Do it. Okay. Yeah. All right. I think that's a better option than Mo's grand plan of having each person go in to see Jeff Colhiti. He had this grand plan. So I've never met Jeff, but apparently Mo and Jeff are just best buds, and he had planned on like sending each person in to the studio where Jeff works, which I seemed more elaborate than realistic, but nevertheless, I think your strategy works more, and so I will proceed forward in terms of getting something to play against, and then recording, and then I'll be able to stack on the independent things afterwards.
And you have, I'm sure, a control of each individual volume.
Yeah.
So you can balance, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Max, my grandson does that. He records, and then he has a singer that he's living in Boston now, but he has a singer that lives in Texas or something, and he sends her the music, the sound of all the guys that he has playing with him, and then she sings, but she's getting it through earphones, so it's similar to what Erlen was talking about.
All right, yeah, I think something like that is much more manageable than the alternatives that have been laid out thus far. There's no way, with all the social distancing, everything, going into a space doesn't seem reasonable. But that sounds good, and I'd appreciate. I'd love to hear whatever Judy, you said. Whatever success story you have.
Email the director tonight.
Because it certainly seems far-fetched at this point.
Yeah.
Or at least from my point of view.
it might be quite comical when you put it all together.
Right?
Though.
Maybe that's a whole different tactic. Seeing
Yeah.
how bad you can make it.
It's a whole new musical genre.
Yeah, taking avant-garde to the whole
Yeah, yeah.
new level. Whoa.
So is Mo going to join us or?
He's supposed to. He said he was going to.
Oh, okay.
I'm taking his word for it. That having been said, he's switched internet providers, and that's been problematic. So
Oh,
maybe that's the culprit,
right.
or at least
Yeah.
something
Maybe
to blame.
that's the reason.
Maybe.
Well, there are plenty of options offered on television for changing all sorts of different things that you presently are fairly happy with, but somebody says they'll sell it to you for 25% less or something.
Speaking of which, tonight on KQED, there is at 11 p.m. they're doing something on Glenn Miller.
Oh,
Not the orchestra that we saw, but Glenn Miller the person. They're having the Air Force Marine Band, one of the military bands, and there's some sort of spiel about him tonight, 11 p.m. at KQED, which should be interesting. Why it's at 11 seems a bit late, but don't have the luxury of choosing.
We can always record it.
right.
True.
We do that a lot.
Oh, that's the phone here. Somebody else will get it.
Okay. Well, that having been said, I'm armed with the 90th birthday celebration, which is I always like revisiting because the sense of it seems as though the talent goes in waves, and right before me, it seemed to be like this swell of a lot of talented people. You have Styles, you have Evan, Joe Barton, Ben, you have Patrick, the bass player. All that were like 3-4 years ahead of me in terms of their age, and so they were all part of the 90th birthday celebration. But
What year was that, Max?
Oh gosh.
let's see if he was born in
Born in 21.
21, 90 years after that.
91, right? Had to be 91? No, that's not right.
What year was he born?
1921. 1921.
21, 9, and 90 and 21 would be
11.
11.
2011.
2011.
2011, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Right.
Which would actually have been, he would have been, so that makes, and what, do you recall when he started with the Rossmoor? Was it initially when he moved to this side of the country, or?
He moved from New York in 1988, and it was, oh gosh, it must have been maybe only a couple years before. He first got involved with the Monday night band that you now play in.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first, and Oz Ramsey had it then. That was his first. I took him to Lafayette right after he moved here, and Oz Ramsey's band was playing in Lafayette in the shopping center there. And so I brought him there, and then he got introduced to Oz, and then from there, he got involved with that band, and then it wasn't long before he got involved with the Rossmoor band.
What was the impetus for his transition across coasts?
Well, he retired, and his wife is my blood relative, my aunt. So the plan was, I think, if my parents were still alive, they would have gone to Connecticut because my mother and Bert were sisters.
Okay.
Well, they had passed away. So they asked me one day, would I mind if they came here? So I said, of
Okay.
course not. And I was just elated because I had all this music growing up. And then there was this band when I moved out. Well, I moved out here in 79. Then I didn't have this music. And I would go to New York sometimes to see things happening. And so they came here and bango, the door was open again. And thanks to all the musicians in this part of the Lafayette, Walnut Creek that he was able to just walk into, and he was just delighted that he could continue his music. So that's how.
So the fact that he retired would mean that he was working up until, and that's a pretty lengthy career in terms of.
And at this, he had stopped playing mostly by then and was just doing copying and doing Broadway plays and then did some things with Lionel then and got into other things. He wasn't playing himself.
Oh, really?
So
Interesting.
yeah.
So he would have been doing that. He was doing that in New York.
Yep.
In big bands, presumably.
Well, he did commercials for TV when they used to have those jingles on years and years ago.
Okay.
And he did the Saturday night show. He did the music on that a little bit. Then there was some bands, local bands in New York that he did. And then he played, but not towards the end, he played in a club there. But it was mostly a copying and arranging before he left. So as soon as he stopped that, then he came here and doors just opened and he was in heaven because he could continue to do it. He just loved it.
Yeah. Often, at least the perspective of the people in the band seems that it's kind of Lionel Hampton and his work with them is kind of overshadowed, or that is kind of the pinnacle thing that everyone sort of focuses on. And there's this other, a whole bunch of work. For instance, I believe NBC is referenced, various other things, which I know nothing about, and I understand the name recognition, Lionel Hampton. I get that, but is there other information about the other stuff that he's done?
I have to go dig all that out. I know he worked with some famous singers. Let's see, trying to think.
Because so often it's the Lionel Hampton part.
Well, one of them was the NBC Studio Orchestra. I think he either wrote for them or maybe even played with them. I'm not sure about that.
He probably did arranging for them, but he didn't play with them. Oh gosh, he's played at one of the inaugural parties for one of the presidents. I forget who it was. And that's because Lionel played at that one. So he didn't play, but my aunt played. My aunt who plays piano played with Lionel for that job. So Lionel used to visit their apartment in New York, and they'd go over pieces. And my aunt was my aunt had written also for Lionel.
Having
also was an arranger and jazz pianist.
Having seen some of the Roberta arrangements, they way over my head.
Something else.
Just in comparison to a lot of Frank's their charts, Roberta's are way more difficult, and And I guess she was part of, or had some input in terms of the Rossmoor Big Band as well, in spite of the fact that they didn't live up to the standards, which also was a problem with Frank every now and again.
But yeah. Well, she also played piano for a while in the Monday night band
Oh, really?
when I first moved here. Yeah. Yeah. She
So
developed all, and then she couldn't play anymore. And that's why you'll see sometimes probably in a video where she's made some criticisms or made some kind of things about the band. And that really wasn't her, but as a patient with the Alzheimer's, you just say things that really, if you were in your normal mind, would criticize her, wouldn't say. So it was a sad thing. And I don't know how Frank took care of her for all those years. With the help of my family. And I thought when she passed that because they were together with their life, always together, never separated. And I thought when she passed that he would just give up. But it was the music that made him live. He just poured everything into the music. If he hadn't had that, he would have been lost. So the music really was wonderful for him to just start another career here. Actually, from 1988 till
wow.
It's amazing.
It occurs to me that, so what, were they a writing team? How did that come about?
Oh God. They met, I think, in New York. Bert was in when she was 17. This goes way back.
Whoa.
She never had a piano lesson. Mind you, there was a piano in the house. She played by ear, and she played with her brothers in bands when she was 17 and got in these clubs, but she shouldn't have been because she was too young. They got her in, and then she heard one day this. I should have to look at the names. I don't know what famous piano player was playing in Boston. And the person that was playing the piano for this, it was a small group, maybe 4 or 5 pieces. She wanted that job, and she was only 18, 19. She would go and listen to them every time they played. And she learned how they played things, and then she sat in and they hired her. And then with that group, I think that's how she met Frank, because he was in another group, and then they ended up in the same group together as 4 or 5 people. And then from there, their relationship developed.
Well, that's impressive, though. Playing by ear and listening to a group and then fitting right in.
Yes, amazing. She was amazing. And we were so fortunate because they never really had a home because they traveled all the time.
Yeah.
They always came to my mom's house in Connecticut. So we'd always have these Christmas parties with our professional musicians. And we had some wonderful, wonderful times. And we continued that here when, because our family's small out here. It's only my 2 sons and Carl and I. And but we would invite people in and we would have our parties here. Yeah.
Look who showed up.
Amazing.
Hi, Mo.
Well, I do owe an explanation, but not an apology, and I'll tell you in a second. Hi, everyone. Judy, nice to see you. Ron Erlin, I mean, my God. You, Maxfield, you're the genius here. There was a bit of a mishap, not a misunderstanding. We were hanging a brand new television, stereo, audio visual system, and it fell off the wall.
Whoa.
Took my components in my living room and spewed them across the room, including a computer. And so we're back together, but we're not hanging on the wall anymore. We're going to find a different solution. Damn the Chinese who built this piece of equipment that's an arm that holds your television out long. It's Chinese, and the metal is not as good as the Bay Bridge. That's all I can. Yeah. So sorry, Ed,
Wow.
especially to you.
Oh.
Well, that's a damn good
Glad
excuse.
you're here. But Maxfield, I know for a fact don't laugh so hard, Maxfield. It's just not that funny, okay? But anyway, I'm glad to be here with all of you.
It must have been painful.
Well, nobody got hurt.
Just
It
hearing
was
about
close. It was
Okay.
close. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we were just learning about Roberta.
Oh, yeah.
And I really had no friend. I never met her. This is
Oh.
prior to me, and so I'm trying to get a sense of. I know our charts. Damn.
Yeah.
I know I know her writing, but
Yeah. Well, I shared with all of you a photograph of Frank and Roberta accepting the Lifetime Achievement Award, the very first one from Generations in Jazz, and he was on the stage, and Roberta was sure smiling. And guess what? She actually kissed me on the cheek. That's never happened, I'm telling you. Never, right? I told you her reaction to the band. I'll remind you all the first time she walked in the door, because Frank drug her down finally. You know, Oz brought Frank finally brought Roberta. And she walks in the door, and I said, tuning note, and they cranked up the first note. Wouldn't you know, watch this. She takes both hands in an emergency move and covers her ears and looks at Frank like, why am I here? And she did it almost every time, you know, and a tuning meter didn't help the Rossmoor band. It actually confused us more. So that was my first impression of meeting Roberta and her wonderful ears that Frank said were really, really sharp ears. So she could hear everything.
apparently
As though Frank were deaf too. I mean, that guy could hear everything too. So they had great ears. They had to be to do what they did. But here I am dominating the conversation when
well, apparently the ears are really good, because we just learned that she played by ear. That she never. That's how she learned, and that goes to show you.
Yeah. Well, the way Frank explained it is he would write something, but he didn't necessarily articulate all the different notes, and she would be at the piano and help him, you know, call out certain notes in the chord that he would then augment or change or feature in the arrangements. Does that sound right, Judy?
She did take a lesson, but it was many years after she had started playing out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was amazing.
Wow. Well, it gives me a sense of perspective in that. So I know I have this little chunk of Frank. I have this little experience. We've got the Lionel portion, and it just occurred to me that there's so much more playing in addition to arranging. Again, that's something I learned. I had no idea that he played in bands.
Well, she was on the road with them too, I think in the middle 50s or so, when they were traveling with their group in the Territory Band. And I know for a fact they were in the Midwest together when they traveled in his, I want to say it was like a 48 or 52 Chrysler or DeSoto, or because he said he had a car that looked like mine. But Frank was not sharp with cars, let me tell you. So all cars looked like his. And right, Judy? I mean, he was not the sharpest guy regarding four wheels and a steering wheel. He just, you know, he had that Toyota Corolla, you know, for, I don't know, forever, you know, and it was fine.
Didn't he have the vanity plate though? He had the F Como.
Oh,
I remember that.
yeah.
That's a very vivid memory for some reason. I'm not sure why, but that plate really sticks out.
But he did like, if somebody gave him a ride, he would inquire what kind of car it was. Well, he did with me because I had some different cars, but he always wanted to know, you know, and I took him, this is a great story. He was over at, what's the name, Judy? What's the name of the final assisted living area that he was at?
Tiffany Court.
Yes. So I went and picked him up on a kind of a hot day. And I said, Frank, you know, it's fairly hot out. It's 80 degrees and the top is down. He went, oh, what are we driving? And I said, well, it's a convertible Pontiac. And he goes, okay. I took him out there and he enjoyed, I mean, thoroughly enjoyed going for like a 20-minute ride in the GTO. And oh yeah. And I said, Frank, I'm going to lay some rubber down here on, it was one of the side streets. And I just scratched it, just a little scratch, you know, a little rubber on it. And he was laughing like crazy. He liked it. So there was a wild side that had been hidden up all those years. Judy, did you ever see just a little less than conservative in him where he'd let go once in a while?
Not very often.
Yeah, it wasn't often. It took laying rubber to get him to laugh like that. But he was like a kid when I did it. He was slapping his knee. He had a good time. And that's what I do remember. I have a picture of it. In fact, it's the lead screen on my computer was Frank and I standing in front of the blue car at his assisted living center that day. And it was warm. Anyway, that's a Frank moment that I won't forget.
Good taste in cars, good taste in eateries,
yeah,
good music.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Cheesecake Factory for sure.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Like Cheesecake Factory.
Yeah. Anyway, I'll tell you, am I dominating too much here?
No, keep it coming.
So it was Yom Kippur, the Jewish holiday, just 3 days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was invited over to my rabbi's and his wife's home. And the week before, I found something very valuable, which was a tape of a song that Frank wrote for the opening of Temple Isaiah for the first ever Thanksgiving service. They rotate through the churches each year. One year it's Lutheran, the next year it's Methodist, the next year it's Catholic. Well, it was time for the Jewish hosting up at Temple Isaiah, and it was a brand new sanctuary. And Rabbi called me and he goes, we need some music. What are we going to do? Can you come up with some music that's just going to fit, you know, the American theme of a Thanksgiving? And I went to Frank and I said, would you want to help me open Temple Isaiah? Of course, Mo. That's, you know, how he talked. Of course. So he said, what do we want to do? I said, well, you pick the song, you pick the orchestration, and you pick how many. We can't have 36 members. So he picked God Bless America. And he wrote it in a World War II theme. And but it had a jazz peak to it. And the theme went da 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 da, boom boom da, and there was this jazz ending to every fourth measure, and it was a crack up. Well, guess what? I taped it and found the tape, and I found the music last week. It was for a 10-piece, and I found the tape, and it's hilarious because it's actually pretty good. You got Aaron Grant on saxophone, and Tom Carter and myself on horn, and Frank on guitar, and I believe it was Ben on drums. And anyway, it was a historic thing, and I had it in my pocket, and I showed it to the rabbi on Yom Kippur, and he goes, I remember it well. I remember who Frank was. He knew Frank, and of course, everybody knew Frank. But that was another memory that just came out of, you know, Judy, you handed me that envelope. Charlie and I were at your house. We were splitting up all the music between the Monday night band and the Rossmoor band. And at the 11th hour, you ran out and said, this is in a different box, Mo. I don't know what this is. Well, it's God Bless America with a tape in it. So, and Frank's original notation. So I found it in a box maybe 2 weeks ago, a week ago, something like that. So that's another memory I have of Frank, and his ability to just write a piece of music for a special event like that was great.
Well, I still like, we still got to find a use for the walk on, walk off thing.
Oh, yeah.
That was such a great
yeah.
video.
Yeah. Walk on, walk off, and also the Johnny Carson theme.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty cool, too. You know, hey, Mo, I found this. I go, what is it? He goes, well, I wrote it. You know, what for? And he goes, well, let's play it. So we played it, and I go, Frank, that's the theme song for Johnny Carson show. Yeah, when Skitch was there, I wrote it for him. I go, Skitch Henderson? He goes, yeah. I knew he worked with Skitch Henderson on the NBC Orchestra, NBC Studio Orchestra. But there it was, he said, Mo, don't get excited. There were 3 different versions of it. This is my version. I said, Frank, it's the version I remember. It's the version they played every night. Might be, you know how Frank was, might have been. Never going to admit to it. But those were good days. Yeah. So anyway, what else we got, Maxfield? What are we doing here?
I just am trying to get a bigger scope of just Frank. The fact that he played in bands and the territory bands, which I know the premise of territory bands.
Yeah.
But
so Oz Ramsey, the Monday night band leader, played in a separate one. They were formed basically after World War II. By the end of 1948 or 50, nobody wanted to hear big band. They'd heard enough. It related to the war effort, and there was newer music coming down the pike. You know, and remember, Elvis was just around the corner by 3 more years, so stand by, things were really going to change. But there were these groups of musicians, professionals, who had to travel in order to get a gig, and they had to travel to get paid. So they picked a territory. Frank was mostly Midwest, and he traveled from South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa. I believe he said Minnesota and maybe Illinois. And he and Roberta were in that particular travel with that band. And I know that for a fact he played in Sioux City, my hometown, because he remembered that there was this dance hall on the river. And I said, that's it. That's Shore Acres. The name was Shore Acres Dance Hall. And it's a beautiful place. And it had a porch that opened up all the way on the Missouri River. And on a summer night, people would go there, and they had dances on Saturday and never Sunday, Saturday night. And he remembers it really well. And I mean, he remembered details. So he moved through South Dakota, Nebraska, like I said, and that was sort of his territory. Now, Oz had a different territory band, and he was more on the West Coast. He was, I believe, went as far north as Oregon and etc. But those were territory bands because they were specifically in a territory. And remember this, if you didn't have somebody booking you, there was no money. So you had to keep moving with your car. And in some cases, they slept in their cars.
That's right.
They were not staying in, this was not a high rent band. And a lot of, I'll give you a little more background. A lot of the guys on the road, whether they were salesmen or musicians, they always bought Nashes. Why a Nash? Because the front seats always reclined into a bed. And that's true. The Ambassadors, all the, the early Nashes, the round ones that looked like eggs, the front seats reclined, and they called them salesman cars because the salesman couldn't afford a hotel and they'd sleep in the car. And that's a true. Judy, you heard that, right? Yeah.
I didn't know about what kind of car it was, but I knew he slept in the car.
Yeah, well, I just said some people, but Frank, I believe, had Chrysler products. You know, he liked, or he had bought, I think it was a 47 or 48, like I said, might have been a 50 DeSoto or Plymouth or Chrysler that he owned. And those are all just from conversations I had, many conversations with Frank.
So the territory bands would have been what years?
Oh,
roughly?
If I had to guess, somewhere between 48 and 54, you know, and they were roaming around. They knew their next assignment because they were in that territory. They stayed there because they basically became a little more well-known that way, staying close to a center, as opposed to traveling across the nation and never repeating the same performance.
Mo, how big of bands were these? Were
I don't think they were big at all.
Combos or what?
No, I think they were 5 or 8 7-piece musicians. These were small bands that were good for a dance, you know, played the standards, and people, you know, there was not television in 1952 for most people, and especially back in the Midwest. You know, New York, Los Angeles, of course, had broadcast television on antenna systems. I was born in 52. We did not have much of a television signal in Iowa, in Sioux City, until almost 1959. We were pulling signals from Omaha 90 miles away, and basically we got snow on the screen. There was just nothing to watch. So the reason I'm saying that is there was not much entertainment other than the movie theater, and if there was a live band that came through, and the territory bands filled that niche.
Now, at that same time, though, it was Dizzy Gillespie and Charlie Parker were coming out with their bebop stuff. Were they part of this territory band also?
Those guys were recording artists. They were the top of the heap.
Yeah,
They had gigs with MGM or with people who were recording back then, Capitol Records. That's why we knew about them, is because they were actually recording artists that were on the road, and those guys had hotel rooms. That's the difference. Those guys, they were not, and I suppose in their early years they didn't, but they were like Miles Davis. He didn't sleep in the car unless he was too drugged. Okay.
Oh, I was going to ask, Ron, were you aware of a territory, since you were on this in Oakland, as I understand it?
Yeah.
Were you aware of?
I was not aware of the specific territories. I knew the musicians were traveling all over the place just to get the gigs.
Yeah, just to earn a living.
Yeah. An interesting thing, you were mentioning Como's cars, and my first car was a 46 Plymouth.
Well,
which you mentioned.
Well, I have a 47 Chrysler Windsor sitting in the garage. I've had it since 71. I'm the second owner, so we'll have to go for a ride. It's the same car. You had the first car after World War II, the 46.
Yeah, this was a coupe. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the two-seater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was the salesman's coupe. It was big in the back so they could put their samples in the back, right? And
yeah. There wasn't a seat. There was like a
right.
bench or something back in the back seat there.
That's it.
Very uncomfortable to sit back there.
Yeah. That's it. It's a salesman coupe. But anyway, you had a 46 Plymouth, did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the same basic car other than the roof line and the seats as that's the first car after World War II.
Yeah.
That car was built. Well, you don't want to hear about cars. I could tell you about cars. You don't want to hear about these cars.
This had a rebuilt engine because I didn't get it till 53 or 4 or something like that.
Well, it was probably fluid drive, the first semi-automatic transmission.
No, this was stick.
3-speed, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's not hold up this thing. I could talk about Chryslers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that when we heard from Brad last week, just how a lot of the industrial sort of things seeped their way into culture and had its influence in many of the songs. It's interesting, these what turned out to be pretty laughably hideous songs that either encourage people to get war bonds or various other industrial things. I can't think of a comparable sort of situation now, but it seemed like a unique thing to World War II and big band jazz era in terms of having the music be heavily influenced by the contexts of, buying war bonds or women in the workforce or this or that.
Or propaganda.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, it's interesting that's it's so neat how it ties the music to the other stuff. That's why, to me, it's such a distinct era in terms of it's contained. You think of records, you think of war, ships and these sorts of things, whereas there's not as distinctive or unifying a thing for the, I guess there's like
You're not the first one with that thought. We know that World War II brought everybody together. Women at the workplace with rivets.
Yeah.
It put women in manufacturing plants building B-17s and B-24s and ammunition. It brought music together. The Glenn Miller Band was paid for by the US government to travel on behalf of the war effort. The bonds were being sold with the help of the bands so they could finance the war. And people were selling or giving away their scrap, their old pots and pans for the war effort. Everybody was doing something to help out.
What was it? It was the bacon fat? Ron, you said you had...
Yeah, the bacon fat was used as a starter for munitions somehow. And it was also, I can remember as a kid making soap out of baking fat by putting sodium hydroxide, mixing sodium hydroxide in there. And that was our soap that we used, because soap was one of the things that was highly rationed during the war.
Anything with oil was rationed as well, including butter.
Yeah, that's what started margarine.
Yeah, they invented oleo, if you've ever heard that term. Yeah. Maxfield, you ever heard of oleo?
Only the word. I have no idea what the hell it is. But...
It's white
Erlen,
butter.
quit laughing so hard, Erlen. I saw that. Oleo is the original brand, but now it's margarine and it's been modified. God knows what else is in margarine now. But oleo was a substitute because butter was oil, and every bit of oil, whether it was food or for lubrication, was basically not available to most people. There was a ration for oleo. My dad and his family had 5 grocery stores, and oleo could be traded. If you had butter in the back, you could get anything you wanted. And I heard that story from quite a few people, that if you had butter, you could trade things. Sugar as well. Sugar was rationed. And those two, sugar and butter, were commodities that could be traded. And you're right about fats and bacon fat. I remember that. And you're right about munitions, because it was used, I think you called it a starter, but I know they manufactured all kinds of shells and things using the oils, whether it was animal oil or some other not synthetic, but other type of oil too.
Now I have to go back to oleo for a minute.
Yeah.
I grew up in Wisconsin, and oleo could not be sold in Wisconsin with color added. You could sell it, but it had to be white so that it would not be construed as butter.
Wow, that's a good story.
Yeah.
Well, in California, or at least in Oakland, I can remember getting the oleo, which was white. It looked like lard or something. But with that, when you bought it, you could also buy a yellow color that you could mix up in it. And that was always a chore to mix this coloring into it. Finally, we just started eating it without the color.
Yeah.
The other thing, I was not very old during the war, but I can remember that we had a 1930 something Packard. It was a big car, and it used a lot of gas. So during the war, we would go for about a 15-minute drive on Sunday afternoon, and that was how much gasoline we could get just to take a short ride like that. And then, unfortunately, the starter, which, it had a starter gear, which lost a tooth, and then the car couldn't be started. So
It's a big
her
car.
was just, yeah,
The
humongous
Packard
car.
was, yeah.
Couldn't start it. But we had a neighbor who delivered things, and he had a horse who pulled a small cart to do deliveries. And he bought the Packard, took everything off of the chassis, and came up then with a larger wagon that his horse could pull. And that's what happened with our Packard.
Well, I have a picture of a 1930 Packard, and you were a wealthy family. That's all I can tell you in Wisconsin.
Oh, it was bought used.
Well, even used, I don't know if you can see this, but I always knew a Packard was a lot of steel. Wait till you see this. Now, this is a convertible, and there's a couple unique things. I don't know. Can you see that at all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ours was black.
Oh, sorry. It's probably less weight than that. But notice one very distinct thing about a Packard, besides the hood ornament, the radiator ornament, which people would love to collect today. It's worth a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. What is unique, I don't know if you can see it, is the dual driving lights on the front. Can you see that the front of that car, let's see,
Two of them.
has two driving lights on the front bumper, front fender, front bumper.
Yeah.
Well, big deal, right? A lot of cars have two driving lights, except for one thing. They turned with the wheels. You turned left, they
Oh,
turned left. You turned right, they turned right. You went down the road straight, they went straight. They were the most incredible gear driven to the steering system. And anyway, that car and a Duesenberg had those, and that was it. I want to say something to you, Erlen. I don't know what your dad was doing, whether he's trading oleo on the back room or drugs or something, but if you had a Packard, you had some money, even if it was used, even if it was used. That was a great car.
that's fine.
Very collectible.
Wow. So you weren't talking about. Go ahead.
He was not able to get into the military because he was sort of interested as a young boy in scientific things, and he had a telescope, and he wondered what the sun would look like. He was about 10 years old. He held the telescope up backwards and looked at the sun. Well, that was the end of one eye.
Yeah.
And you couldn't,
gosh.
it damaged the retina. It wasn't visible that his eye didn't work, but it was out of commission. So
Yeah,
he
tried it.
didn't qualify for the military. He ended up working for a company that was developing the first radar systems.
Wow. Was that Raytheon?
No, that was Borg. It
Borg
was
Warner.
a two-part name, but
Borg Warner.
yeah, maybe it was Borg Warner,
Yeah.
but it might have. Borg had a couple of different things going.
Yeah. So I was going to relate to you, the horse cart, and then I continue to give you guys stories, but I seem to be dominating things. I can't help myself. You got great stories. So my dad and all of his four brothers all enlisted. Everybody enlisted. There was a war, and the thing to do was to go to war. Well, each of my brothers, or each of the Levitch boys, there were 5 of them, had a grocery store. And that was set up by Morris Levitch, their father. That's who I'm named after. I'm going somewhere with this. So who's going to run the grocery store while my dad is off? Guess what? My mom. So my mom is managing not only the grocery store, but the deliveries for the grocery store. And gas was no longer plentiful. They had rationing for gas. So my mom bought a horse and a cart, and she's driving groceries up and down the streets in Sioux City in 1942 and 43, sitting on the front of a wooden wagon with, an old hag horse that broke out of the barn every time in the middle of the night. and kicked the side of the barn out. And to this day, well, back in those days when I was growing up, they'd always talk about the horse banging its hoofs against the side of the barn. It was a rented barn, and they had to rebuild the barn all the time, and they lost money delivering groceries because of the horse, and they still had to feed the horse. So that was a story from World War II. How's that?
Something else.
Yeah. Anyway, back to Frank.
Wow. Full circle there. Wow.
Yeah. Well, when I talked to Frank, he was, he was a product of that period of time, as well as the Depression, and he was pretty thrifty, and it came from that experience, just like most people did back in the. What year was he born, Judy?
1921.
Yeah. So he was 8 years old, 9 years old, 10 years old, and 11 years old when the Great Depression hit, and it affected him. He can remember, he remembered what it was like. And I like to hear his stories, when he was growing up. I've been in contact a little with his cousin, Ken Como.
Yeah.
Is that right? It's his cousin.
I don't know how it's not a close relative.
No, not close, but
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, I was in touch with him because we become friends over cars, and he was asking how you were doing, and Judy, he just wanted to know how you were doing, how the family was.
That was nice. We chat once in a while.
Yeah. Anyway, that's. You got anything else?
Is the family still spread across?
He was born in Minnesota, Frank was. And when he was fairly young, they moved to Pennsylvania. Yeah. And then one of his brothers, he's one of 8 kids. One of his brothers gave him a guitar when he was like 10 or 11, or I don't remember what age. And then they had a music store, and I know he worked in the music store. And in high school, he was there was a band, and then even during high school, he got into some. Well, you probably remember the names of the big name bands that he got into play with pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, he was good on the guitar. That was his instrument,
Yeah, right.
It wasn't piano like a lot of arrangers will sit at the piano, and he was not that comfortable at a piano, actually. Yeah. So
when they played with that combo that they started when there was Bert in it, and there was I got a picture of that. A woman played a good accordion. Frank was on guitar. There was a bass player. Roberta played the accordion, and then there was a drummer and a singer, and they would rotate. Frank would be he'd be on the vibes sometimes, and then he'd be on the guitar, and they kind of could change. Some of them could change positions.
Yeah.
But yeah, they played as a group.
I just know that he got to New York after the territory. They were tired of traveling.
Yeah.
They'd done it. They'd been on the road long enough. Yep. And somehow they got to New York, and I think they sold the car at that point. And because there's no place in New York for a car. And that was it. They were in New York until they came out to live close to Judy.
Yep.
And that's the story.
Well, I don't know about you, but I think we need an accordion in the band. I think there needs to be some accordion.
I was about to retire, and now I think it's getting closer. Okay. Yeah. Next thing you know, next time we put an ad in the Rossmoor News where we need musicians. Last time we got 4 harmonicas from the Harmonica Club, and I had to break the news to them. And I blamed it on Frank. I said, Frank just hasn't gotten to writing the harmonica music. When he does, then I'll give you a call. But if you tell me there's an accordion coming, then I'm either going to refer them to Lawrence Welk or I quit.
I I don't know.
Although I don't
Well, in
mind.
those days I did accordion because you didn't have pianos everywhere you went. So the
Yeah.
accordion worked years
Yeah,
ago.
it's true. It was portable. Well, with
All right,
that,
give us a
Maxfield,
thought.
anything else?
I want to quickly revisit what we started with earlier about the recording of the band. We discussed best practices about going about that. Judy had a success story with a choir, and so I think the plan is to get a track down that people can record to, something solid like Ben,
Yeah.
and then
Or Michael Henning.
or Michael Henning,
Yeah.
and then expanding from there. I know there's really no sense of the current musicianship and how the sections are currently, but do we have a bass player?
Yeah, Max is the bass.
Okay, Max. Okay.
Max is the bass. And you know what we should do is well, we can talk about it, Maxfield, because we
Okay.
don't want to cut out our new drummers.
Yeah, that was my
But we have to figure out a way to get a good track down, and then well, you and I should talk about that with Greg.
Okay.
But I just heard from Jeff tonight, not about this, but he's available if you need some help, and
Okay.
I think we should get it going, because the sooner we can get everybody to their instrument and tell Erlen that he's going to record first trombone 2 weeks from now on A Train,
Yeah.
that's going to give him 2 weeks to dust off that trombone.
Wow.
And
What are you saying? You think I've not been playing?
no, I wasn't even inferring that, but just in case, I know there are many, Erlen, not like you. Sorry, I know you do practice, seriously, but there's a lot of people that haven't touched their instruments since the last rehearsal. We have some serious ones, though. I talked to Jan Asklund today, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, a lot of people have been practicing. I know.
What song?
A Train.
Oh, okay.
I would pick something that they're familiar with, that they're rusty at. They're going to have to work to lay down their track. Can you imagine being third trumpet, coming behind Charlie and you to lay down third trumpet? They better have it right, or they're going to ruin the rest of the recording. So, if it was me, I'd be running that song every day, 3 rehearsals a day or 3 practices, so that after 14 days, 2 weeks, I could close my eyes and lay the track down. If not, we're going to know what happened. So I think if we started a new song every 2 weeks, so there was a succession like a railroad car coming at you, one after it, one after that, we would basically bring the musicianship back. Not quite the same as being in the room, but at least everybody's got chops and they're working on a song they know about, and they know that there's a recording coming for them on a certain day, and they have only 24 hours to turn it around and give it to the next person, because it's going to take 36 days, 36 musicians to get a final cut before you and Jeff maybe look at it and see what can be done. So that's the plan, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's not too many of us here tonight, but is it possible to get this kind of thing out to the rest of the band members?
Well, I think if you do, it has to be in a document, and a bullet point. There's 5 things that need to be done. These are the dates between here and here that you'll be asked to record. This is the song. It has to be well done. Otherwise, my email and Maxfield's will light up like a Christmas tree with questions, misconceptions. I'd rather do it once the right way versus explain it to each person at a time. We should have a very clear, easy to read piece of paper with a timeline on it that lines up first trumpet, second trumpet, third trumpet, fourth trumpet, etc. on a timeline, so that everybody knows that on a certain date, that's your date. You better have that ready to record. And that's the pressure I like to hear, that's going to force people, I don't like that word, but coerce people to have their part ready.
Keeps
because
people
you're
calm.
going to record it and we're going to hear it. So
Yeah.
anyway,
All right.
yeah,
Sounds
that's the approach I think is the right approach, because I'm not into sitting at my computer answering 38 different people. What day am I on, and what do I have to practice, and what's involved, and how do I get the recording? I mean, they need to know how, what microphone they're going to use. Are they going to just record on a laptop, etc. So we have to talk about that, Maxfield.
Okay, will do.
Okay.
Sounds good. Right on that note, I think that's about it. All right.
You did a great job, Maxfield. Thanks.
Well, I appreciate everyone coming. I always like can't go too many Wednesdays without something. You
Yeah.
gotta fill, Wednesday is the big band.
Good for
night.
you. Yeah.
So
All right. Well, until next time.
you
Yep.
bet.
And
Take
Judy,
care.
my best to you and Carl. Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Well,
Thanks.
that having been said,
Signing off.
signing off.
Okay. Have a good
Next
night,
time.
everybody. Thanks,
All right.
Maxfield. Great
Thank
job,
you.
Maxfield.
Thank you.
Kudos to you. I'll see you
Appreciate
later.
it.
Yeah.
Take care. See you next week.
All right.